So today is Wednesday the 6th of February 2019.
Already, yes.
Yeah, already. And I'm here with Gordon Boyd, who is the head of the senior school. Now, Gordon, before we start talking about your time here at Watson's, tell us a little bit about your background and your early life, your studies.
Okay, let me dredge my memory back.
Yes.
I was born and brought up in Edinburgh. In fact, very close to Watson's, Newington. And in fact, my dad worked at the Royal Edinburgh Hospital for many years. So whether it's just a pretend memory or an actual memory, I think that I remember the music school being built.
Oh,
which
yes,
we used to
yes.
come and pick him up from
Yes,
work.
just
I seem
over
to
the
remember
wall
a
there.
strange parabolic
Yes.
shape emerging from
Yeah.
behind the wall of the maroon school. It wasn't Watson's I went to, but I knew lots of people at Watson's.
Yes.
So
You were at the academy, weren't you?
I was at the Edinburgh Academy.
Yeah,
You're right,
yeah.
we've revealed.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I
We can stop the interview now.
I was and enjoyed that. I went there when I was. I didn't go there all the way through. It was from late primary through the senior school in Henderson Road, and I had a very happy time as a school, but particularly latterly. I think I enjoyed being in Edinburgh, being at school. Those summer days that seem to go on forever, particularly in the upper years.
Yes.
But I left Edinburgh after school, studied in Aberdeen University, went on to do English, language and literature, and also some constitutional law and psychology. That was a positive experience. And then, I suppose, thinking I wanted to spread my wings a bit in a Scotland that was quite different to the cosmopolitan place it is now.
Yeah,
And the more self-confident place I think it is
yes,
now. I don't know if you'd agree. But
I do, yeah.
It was a very much a place, it felt to me, with a chip on its shoulder. I went south and was very lucky to get a teacher training place in Cambridge University, which started a long link with Cambridge, either living in Cambridge or doing head teacher qualifications, a master's, all connected with Cambridge University over the 10, 15, 20 years after that.
So you did your teaching qualification then in Cambridge and found your first job?
I found my first job in Buckinghamshire, in Bletchley, which was where I'd done my teaching practice. The Cambridge system was a long teaching practice.
Yes,
The full
the
second
whole term,
term
wasn't it?
was teaching practice, and they said, well, we could have a job to cover a maternity leave, which suited me very well, because what I really wanted to do was to travel and work abroad, and I, by that stage, had already applied to do voluntary service overseas. So this was a pretty tough experience, starting teaching, as it is for everyone, in a perfectly good school. But of course, I was a naive and unpracticed teacher. But it was a useful springboard into the profession. But what I was really doing was waiting to go abroad. I remember there were some wonderful early teaching experiences, in spite of it being full of memories that I try to eradicate. There was a wonderful class I had with whom I read To Kill a Mockingbird, and that was one of my first really strong experiences of teaching life through literature. That was a very good early experience that taught me a lot, and was something I used in one shape or form, not necessarily with that novel in the future. But I headed off for Zambia, which is where I spent 2 years, ostensibly teaching communication skills in the further education sector, what they call in Zambia training institutes. So this was teaching English to people who were training to be plumbers or office machine repair people. I'm not sure if there are office machines that need repairing anymore, but there were typewriters and Banda machines.
Oh,
and
yes,
that kind of
yes.
thing. You remember that?
You're speaking my language now.
Yes, exactly. And the smell of meths, early teaching. But these people repaired those machines, and then others who were maybe going to be secretaries or whatever. But this was functional English to people of 16 years and older. Yeah. But to my surprise, I was asked after a year of doing this actually to contribute to the training of other functional skills teachers, because this was a British Council project. There were two of us volunteers on the project, and it developed quite well. My colleague, the other volunteer, did the rounds of various colleges releasing one or two teachers, which enabled a small group of 6 to 8 teachers to come together in the teacher training college, and I was drafted onto the staff there to help to teach the people who were infinitely more experienced than I was, and that was a wonderful opportunity to work with some very bright Zambian teacher trainers, including my counterpart, Joseph Mukuni, who was also a new recruit, probably 5 or 6 years older than me. And Joseph went on to be a very significant civil servant in the Ministry of Vocational and Higher Education, and I think became something like the Assistant Permanent Secretary. He and I had stayed in touch a bit, but that was a lot. That was many years after we'd worked together.
Yes. And how long did you spend? 2 years, and you intended to come back at the end of the 2 years. That was part of the plan.
So, yes, there was a possibility of extending. I was asked to stay for another year. Some volunteers did. I felt I need to get on with another bit of my life now. And so I did come back, and I was lucky enough to get to finish my probationary teaching teaching role in a school in Hertfordshire, in Hemel Hempstead, which was one of the trickier schools I worked in. But again, as the kind of school, once you've built up a rapport with the pupils and engaged with them and took them canoeing or hill walking or just interested in their careers, it was a joy. And I was there for shortly under 3 years, just a little bit under 3 years. But I always think that was where I learnt my craft as an English teacher. Difficult circumstances, lots of challenges for families and individuals, but actually teaching is mainly about building good relationships.
I felt the same at the beginning of my teaching career in a similar sort of school, not very far from there too. Then you moved on, what was to your first promotion, presumably, was it?
Yes, I think I had some minor responsibility laterally in Hertfordshire, but I moved to Peterborough to be number 2 in a very large English faculty, maybe 10 people. And after a very short period of time, I was asked to act up as a head of department. The head of department was going off for a while, and that was for a year. And then the post was advertised, and I was lucky enough to get it. So that was me in a pretty significant middle manager role, which again was full of fun. We had a great faculty and very positive pupils. I found Peterborough to be a difficult place in some ways to get into. I live very much in the community. The Development Corporation had recently folded, and so there were lots of quite small, inexpensive houses that could be built. This was the Thatcher selling off of public stock. So whilst I may have had and have concerns about that, the fact is I bought one of these. I was able to live very close to the school in a small and inexpensive house, but I found the city, and actually still find it when I go back, to be a strange mix of the fringes of the Fen, so East Anglian in that respect, but also because it's on the main line, a good proportion of people who are Londoners, and then of course huge, like many of those Midland cities. And I never really thought of Peterborough as Midlands, but it is really East Midlands.
Just East Midlands,
which have had at various times in their history intakes of people who maybe were Italian or Polish or Pakistani, and the latter was a very large group. So the school I taught in, which was a brand new school, maybe 5 years before I built in modern terms, so there were no bells, first name terms with the sixth formers, no library, because the community library was our library, no fence, no boundary, but in a city that was not really at ease with itself. You know, this was a suburb of Peterborough, but into which many children were bused. So it was there was an edge to it that very good teaching experiences, but quite a challenging community. And sadly, shortly after I left, some of the plans of the community education visionaries were really reversed, and a fence was erected around the school, a library was built in the school, and not long after the school closed, which was sad. It was a real sadness if you were as a teacher and you belonged to the place for 8 years for me, and that's maybe as much as that.
A long time.
You go back and you see nothing. It's been razed to the ground.
So, and after that, then
deputy headship in Cambridgeshire's, the biggest school in Cambridgeshire, almost 2,000, Hinchingbrooke. Which was a really lovely school, great job. And I had all of the leadership opportunities, whether it's curriculum or pastoral or personnel or curriculum planning or professional development, and for a while there were 3 deputies, which was a large number of deputies at the time, and the head was very good at circulating you, so you think, I'm settled here in this bit of the school. It was a large, so the school was at lower school, middle school and sixth form, so you moved round, and also that you had a sort of standing resident team of experts who were the pastoral experts of children, but the deputies rotated, a bit like cabinet minister. That's probably a bit grandiose, but it was a very, very good experience of getting a sense of how I think school leadership is not really to do with being the expert on anything very much. I think you've got to know a little bit about everything, but being able to just hold the general line about the direction of travel, or at least talking about the general direction of travel and working out what you can do and who's going to do what.
Seeing how all these elements interact to everybody's benefit.
And encouraging, or maybe
holding back,
redirecting some people. But I mean, you work with the people you work with. You're foolish to think, if only it was it's like a teacher saying, if this lesson would have been fine if only the children were better.
Yes, that's right. And after Hinchingbrooke, then
headship.
You'd taken a qualification in headship at Cambridge.
There's an English qualification called National Professional Qualification in headship.
And then
I'd done that at a master's. It's a little bit earlier in English teaching related things and teaching.
So this headship was.
This was of a school called City of Norwich School. Which is, like many schools in English cities, the ex-grammar school. And had I suppose if you shrunk the front of Watson's by a half, you'd probably have the frontage of CNS.
That imposing facade.
But a smaller setup altogether. But a proud school, which had, as all these schools had, a difficult time post-grammar school. Comprehensive schools weren't welcomed with all enthusiasm by everyone. As somebody committed to comprehensive education, I was determined in 2000, the school had been comprehensive for 22 years, but in 1978. And I was determined that there should be no ambiguity, that it was a great comprehensive school, serving a very balanced area, actually. It was the most balanced of all the schools I've ever worked in terms of its intake. That we should do our job in that respect, so developing special educational needs education, extracurricular activities, making sure that we had good curriculum pathways, working closely with the local college, city college, were all things I wanted to do, as well as really encouraging the development of the most academic study of science or languages or English or maths.
So a really good experience there.
It was. I think about it, I mean, I was very wet behind the ears.
Even with the previous experience?
Yes, because I was relatively young, and certainly when I went to heads meetings in Norfolk, which was my first time in Norfolk as well. I very much was. I remember arriving at meeting venues that I'd never been to before, you know, other schools or conference centres, and thinking, I wonder where the heads meeting is, because I was always, you know, trying to do the heads job. I wasn't really I hadn't given space to get there in time and so on, because I was busy thinking about the school and the children and the parents. So I remember vividly getting to a place and thinking, I wonder where it is, and looking around the car park and seeing a procession of besuited, tall, grey-haired gentlemen, and we just joined on. And I was the besuited, young and not grey-haired gentleman. But it's funny, in the time I was in Norfolk, which was 16 years, that all changed, and the age profile, particularly the gender of school education leaders changed a great deal.
It was time the passing of the guard.
It was, but some of those guys were great mentors. I remember one said to me, "Whatever you do, don't stay in Norfolk too long."
Right. So tell me, after that period of headship, was it then that you came on to Watson's, or was there something else in between?
I was 8 years out of school.
Yes.
Which I would thoroughly recommend to anyone as in education, because you see things differently if you're not completely connected with the nuances and the rhythm of a particular institution. So you can look at things from afar and just think a bit more about, well, how it works there, it works quite well there, but the same thing, the same approach to curriculum or organisation doesn't quite work so well in another school. So it was an advisory role to begin with, and that's why I left headship, sideways move into a role. I was 14 to 19 director, that's what it was called. This is part of the previous Labour government's approach to curriculum. They were keen on pathways, A-levels important, but not the be-all and end-all. Apprenticeships, BTECs, something called the diploma that they tried unsuccessfully to bring in, and that's where my interest in working with other institutions, colleges, universities, primary schools, came in. So I did that for a while, and actually there was a time where I went back to run a school that was in some difficulty for half a year. Yes. That was the time the government changed as well, because a lot of the work we were doing was pursuing the Labour government education agenda.
And then suddenly
it was different. Michael Gove arrived and had a more austere version, with the inspectorate in a different role altogether. And then, partly because some people I suppose I respected said, well, you should go for it. The top job in Norfolk education came up, which is the assistant director, is head chief education officer effectively, but the assistant director of children's services, recognising that children's services is social services. But education's a bit of it, so I was the education person in the team of 5 or 6 of us who were the children's services leadership team, but education was my bit. And that was quite something, because it was in really at the height of the Tory government, the Gove regime, which was quite punitive in a way. The doctrine was schools would be much better if they were run more autonomously by academy trusts. Now, I agree with the idea that schools could be run autonomously. But I knew from having been a teacher governor back in Hertfordshire that schools in 1988 in England were run autonomously.
Yeah.
The idea that local authorities ran schools was incorrect. And so I was, on the one hand, proud to work for the local authority, but on the other hand, saying certainly to head teachers and governors, and there are governing bodies in English schools, unlike in Scotland, you need to get on with things. If you rely on us, thinking we're not doing that, and in fact that theme, we don't run schools, you do, governors, was a sort of theme throughout my term of office as the assistant director, and actually that helped because the inspectorate and the government were very keen that we played our part in being the catalyst for change, knowing that we didn't have the staff or resources. The resources were in schools. We didn't had a smallish staff. So our job was to just find the right way of not allowing schools to be dependent on us. And one way or another, through lots of partnership working with head teachers and governors and Ofsted and so on, the tide turned and Norfolk schools ceased to be, in Ofsted terms, at the bottom of the pile, which they had been. And there was a huge amount of great teamwork. But there was a time when we were completely celebrating, because in terms of the proportion of Norfolk schools that were good or better, we were average.
Yes.
And of course, average is not what you want to be.
Yeah.
We'd always been well below average before, and things continued to go a bit better, and then I came to Watson's. But the story continued, and Norfolk schools do quite well compared to others. Yeah. So I played a small part there, out of school.
And left a legacy there.
Well, contributed anyway. But it was it was great bringing people together in a really quite demoralised environment.
And then you heeded the advice about not staying too long in Norfolk.
I did 16 years. Sounds like a long
headed
time.
back north.
Yes.
So tell us your first impressions on arriving at Watson's. In this role as head of the senior school.
Yes, it was unclear to me whether I would like it or not. I mean, before I came, the appointment process confirmed that I would like it, so I came with great optimism and a very positive feeling, which has not, you'll be glad to know, it has only been enhanced. But I felt I'd be very happy to contribute to Watson's, a school I knew a bit about. I obviously thought long and hard about whether I could possibly work in the independent sector that I'd never done before. I knew that Edinburgh is unique. 30-something% of youngsters go to independent schools, unlike anywhere else I'd worked where it would be 5 or 10%. And so my kind of sense as a comprehensive school head teacher of wanting to put the local private school out of business was not really a very sensible frame of mind for Edinburgh, wherever I worked in Edinburgh. There was a family pull back to Edinburgh as well, so it was a professional and personal move. But it seemed to me that there was enough of a sense of Watson's being an interesting place to work, there was no doubt about that, but also that there'd be a role for me in being the head teacher effectively of the senior school, because I knew that governors and the previous principal and Melvin were very keen that the senior school should operate as a unit within the college, a little bit like the junior school had already done, and for the principal certainly not to be the de facto head teacher of the senior school. The reason I tested that thoroughly is whilst I wasn't seeking fame and fortune, I very much didn't want to be a deputy head. I'd done that, I'd done headship, I'd led a major organisation, and I thought, I think that would be difficult. And so there was quite a lot of... Sorry, go on.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But I say, you feel that you have that scope for leadership then within the present setup.
It takes constant redefining, because of course people have expectations, but I'm very keen to say to people, head of the senior school means I am your head teacher, parents, children and so on. And very rarely now do to people say, well, we'll have to talk to you and Mr. Roth. I say, well, by all means, talk to Mr. Roth, but that's probably if you really can't speak to me because you want to complain about me.
Yes, yes.
Or let's draw him in by all means, but I make the decisions about the demeanour of the school and staff appointments and admissions and so on, in the way George does in the junior school.
Yes,
so
exactly.
The principals, it has been agreed, nothing to do with me, but long before I came, that the principal is effectively binding the whole college together through his vision and presenting Watson's to the world and allowing Watson's to engage with the world and to plan for that over the next 10, 20 years, looking to the long term. Whereas I'm very much running the school on a day-by-day basis.
You're walking the corridors
and spending a lot for parents' fees on providing the best education. So that needs,
making appointments and so on.
Yes, and it was not. It took very little time to recognise that that's what the job was. Mm-hmm. It's taken a little bit longer to actually realise that. Mm-hmm. Not because of any resistance, and I've been incredibly well supported by people here, pupils, parents, staff, governors, really Watsonian community, really, really warm welcome, which is came as a nice surprise. I thought, well, what would they make of somebody who firstly went to the wrong school, if you do scrape that,
which is a terrible thing in Edinburgh.
Terrible thing in Edinburgh. And then has been away from Scotland for 30-something years. But none of it. But you see, this is what I've always liked about Watson's, the openness, the lack of exclusivity. And I have no difficulty chatting to parents of potential pupils about that, about the welcome and the fact that actually Watson's quite likes to draw people in. Don't be misled by the stone wall at the front.
Yeah. What do you see as the ideal Watson's pupil?
I don't think there is such a thing. Well, let me try and generalise. I think the reason I think it's a difficult question is because diversity is the hallmark of Watson's. Girls and boys, pupils who are very, very talented but struggle through something very specific like dyslexia, or people who just are incredibly academically gifted, or you watch them playing or performing or playing, and it's just eye-watering. It's quite emotional. You think they really are very impressive, and they've learnt a lot of that here, and we've accompanied them. So they have the talent, but we as the teachers or supporters or the parents have accompanied them as they become these very significant achievers.
What advice would you give to each pupil as they leave? If you could, I know you stand on the stage and you shake all the hands, but if you could spend 5 minutes with each of them, what would you say?
I think
you'd have to sacrifice your summer holiday, of course.
Yes, exactly.
What's that amount of time?
A small price.
Just a small.
Who needs a summer holiday?
But what general message would you give?
I want them to take confidence from all they've achieved at Watson's, to capitalise on things they see as their strengths, and be open to new opportunities, because you never know what comes along, and so use that lovely open, generous spirit of Watson's as you go forwards in the world, and meet people, have projects with people, travel, and just see where your confidence in your existing ability takes you, because you there's no limit to what you'll achieve in your experiences, and there'll be bad times as well as good, but I hope that Watson's has provided you, with that really critical resilience and sense of, that's okay, that hasn't gone very well, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to get up the next day.
You mentioned the word project in its normal English sense.
Yes.
But there is also, of course, projects with a capital P in the Watson sense. You've taken part? You're a great supporter of projects.
I'm a huge supporter. In my first 2 years here, I was able to visit a number of projects. I think half a dozen projects I visited. now and spent a day doing various things. We have S1 and S2 to provide an excellent experience for as well, and I'm very keen that their experience is as memorable and not just a sort of, oh, well, don't worry, you'll have projects one day. And I'm very grateful to colleagues for making those good experiences too. But projects is something special, and although I've only known about it recently, that kind of thing's very dear to my heart. I mean, I thought about being a teacher first when I was at school and did the equivalent at the academy of S1 projects, or guide P7 it is, and was a senior pupil.
Yes.
And I remember coming down off Dries Mayer one lovely June day, and somebody said, oh, this has just been the best day. And I thought, it has been the best day, hasn't it? And I felt at once very sad because my time at school was coming to an end, and then also optimistic because I thought, one way or another, I could do this kind of thing in the future. I didn't really think I'd be a teacher. So Project does all of that. This coming year, I'm running a project for the first time for me.
For the whole 2 weeks?
For the second week.
The second
We've
week,
got a group of pupils who are going to be at a centre for a week. Yeah. And then I'm going to take them for the second week.
Whereabouts?
So a combination of Glen Lyon will be principally. But we're going to begin up in Fort William and with a couple of days of cycling and onto the beach at Arisaig, which is a place I love very much.
Oh, yes.
And then to Glen Lyon for some conservation work. Hopefully a Monroe or two.
Oh, exciting.
So very exciting. Very exciting.
Envious.
So you're welcome to
come. I realise we're under a little bit of time pressure, but you've given a really clear idea of what pushes you, what motivates you to do the job every day. Are there sometimes other aspects of the job that sometimes you don't like so much? Time pressure, for example?
Very few. I mean, the pressure is, yes, I mean, it's Heather Wilson, my predecessor, who was a terrifically good mentor, really. I never worked with her. I think she was a mentor to a lot of people, but she was a mentor in a way. She said, you know, it's just a way of life. And I thought, well, I know that. I've been a head teacher. I know how committed it is. So it wasn't so much the time and energy. It's more the being present that's part of my job, which I enjoy. And even although there are a huge number of things to sort out, you know, fix an appointment, do a short list, look at the admissions or whatever, you know, you can spend all evening. But it's right, you need to be here to enjoy, to meet, to see people. Partly to be seen. I suppose that's inevitable. I think it goes with the job. I sometimes think when I'm working late at night, just trying to finish off the detail. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've been at an event, which of course I've enjoyed. Thinking, well, I could have done this 3 hours ago, and now I could be watching the 10 o'clock news rather than burning the midnight oil. But that's what Heather meant. It is a terrific privilege to do this job. And so you put the hours in, and you're present, and you're roundabout. And I do believe that in a big, successful school, the person who's doing my job, and others feel the same, need to be around and about in a normal way. I mean, of course, there are events to attend, special meetings and so on. But I'm talking about just on the normal things,
to be seen,
so the art exhibition or
of course,
whatever, the rugby or the hockey. And actually, I enjoy that. My Saturday morning round of Peffermill and
it's not a chore for you.
Marside and it's part of what we do.
But there are times, like the holidays, when you switch off. And you can go unshaven and scruffy.
I think I probably always look a bit scruffy. So unshaven.
But what do you like doing?
I mean, it's having been out of a school environment for a long time, 8 years, coming back into the school. It's amazing how the work for people who don't work in schools is much more consistent, whereas ours really has peaks and troughs, and the troughs are very low. You know, that you are still here, I'm still available, I'm sometimes on call, but you know, I can go off and do something completely different. And I always say to colleagues, look, you've got to do that. This is the payback time for all the tension and the intensity of the exam period or whatever. So you know, we all enjoy, my family and I, the outdoor life, and so walking or cycling. We tend to go camping in the summer. Last year we were away for a month, which I haven't done for, you know, and I could never have done in my last month, which was wonderful. In Spain and France, and we have a kind of family shared house in Languedoc. So the summer holidays always include going there for a few weeks, which is a pleasure. And then, you know, reading and thinking about things and swimming. They're normal things you just do when you're relaxing, but it's time with the kids.
Well, thank you very much for that. I'm sure that maybe in 3 or 4 years we can come back and do another interview and see how things are going then, and what your long-term plans are for the school and so on. But clearly you've fitted in very well to the school and influencing the direction it's going. So,
well, thank you very much for being such a good documenter and our interviewer. Thank you, Rod.
Okay.